All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tearing into Chapter 12 of Kenya's Constitution to see exactly what the supreme law of the land says about the money you pay every single day. Because, if you've ever found yourself wondering how the government actually manages its wealth, how it pulls in revenue, and what rules are actually out there to protect your hard-earned cash, well, you're definitely in the right place. We are breaking down the whole framework of public finance.
So we're starting with a massive, incredibly relatable question today. Why do taxes in Kenya seem to just keep going up while everyday citizens still feel this really intense financial squeeze? It's a total paradox, right? And it drives a massive amount of public debate. We are constantly hearing about new revenue targets and new tax measures, but the reality on the ground, it usually tells a very different story.
Look, you probably feel this reality every single day. You absolutely feel it at the fuel pump when prices jump out of nowhere. You feel it at the supermarket checkout when you're just trying to buy basic food items. You experience it when you're dodging potholes on poor roads, or honestly, when you're just waiting in line all day at an overcrowded public hospital. The daily squeeze is so real. So where is all that money actually going? That is the exact question Chapter 12 of the Constitution was built to answer.
To figure this out, Chapter 12 basically boils down to three key ideas. Number 1, revenue and debt. Number 2, principles and benefits. And number 3, oversight and accountability. Let's get right into it.
Starting right off with Part 1, revenue and debt.
Here's the wild thing people sometimes forget. The government doesn't actually have its own independent supply of money. They don't have a magic money tree. It is 100% funded by citizens. The national wealth is literally your wealth. Every single shilling the government spends originates from the people, whether directly or indirectly.
And here's exactly how they pull it in. Every single time you buy airtime, fuel your car, take home your monthly salary, or hustle to run a biashara, a small business, you are the one funding the country through these different taxes and fees. We're talking about value-added tax on the goods you buy, pay-as-you-earn deductions yanked straight out of your paycheck, specific taxes layered onto your fuel, and all those various permits and levies you need just to keep a business open. You are actively funding the state every single day.
And notice how this builds up and hits your daily life in real time. Taxes don't just happen in a vacuum. They trigger this crazy ripple effect. When the government bumps up fuel taxes, it doesn't just make filling your tank pricier. Boom, transport fares immediately go up. And because transport's more, the price to move agricultural goods spikes, which means your food prices rise at the market. Suddenly, the everyday expenses for a biased share increase across the board. The whole tax system is deeply, deeply tied to your cost of living.
But taxes aren't the whole story, right? Under Article 214 of the Constitution, the government also leans really heavily on public debt. And let me give you the 100% truth about that debt. It is a legal charge on the consolidated fund. What does that actually mean for you? It means every single loan taken out by the national government is eventually paid back by you, the taxpayer. The debt burden is, at the end of the day, a citizen burden.
Okay, moving on to Part 2, principles and benefits.
So, what's the actual deal? What does the Constitution legally promise you in return for handing over all those taxes? Well, Article 201 sets up the fundamental rules of public finance in Kenya. It clearly states that the burden of taxation absolutely must be shared fairly. It also explicitly demands that public money be used in a prudent and responsible way. The Constitution is basically saying, hey, public finance is not a private piggy bank, it's a public trust, and it has to be managed with total openness and accountability.
Basically, the whole point of this setup is that your taxes are strictly meant to make your life better. The social contract is pretty straightforward. You pay your share, and in return, the government delivers improved roads, hospitals with actual medicine and equipment, better schools, enhanced security, and just high-quality public services all around. Your money is supposed to be visibly working for you, upgrading the infrastructure and the overall welfare of the country.
Now, to stop all the cash from just sitting in Nairobi, Article 202 and 203 of the Constitution make sure this money actually reaches your local area. It guarantees that revenue raised nationally has to be shared equitably between the national and county governments. Specifically, at the very least, 15% of all revenue collected by the national government must go straight to county governments. This is huge because it ensures local development gets funded and governance is brought way closer to the people.
And there's this really cool safety net, too. The Constitution goes a step further to protect regions that have historically been left behind. Article 204 creates what's called the Equalisation Fund. This carves out exactly 0.5% of all national revenue specifically for marginalized areas. The goal? To provide basic, essential services. We're talking water,
roads, health facilities, electricity to bring the quality of life in those specific areas up to par with the rest of the nation. It's a totally vital tool for leveling the playing field.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Part 3, Oversight and Accountability. So we know how the money comes in and how it's supposed to go out, but what happens when it all goes sideways? Look, no secret here. A lot of Kenyans are incredibly frustrated. We've got this heavy tax burden, but then citizens are constantly dealing with corruption, totally wasteful spending, projects that sit half-finished for years, and just the general misuse of public funds. When billions get thrown at a project, but the community still gets terrible service delivery, well, that constitutional promise from Article 201 is completely broken.
To stop that kind of madness and protect your money, the Constitution created two massive independent heavyweights, and it's super important to understand how they tackle this from different angles. You've got the Controller of Budget on one side and the Auditor-General on the other. Essentially, one acts before the money is spent, and the other checks the receipts after.
Let's look at the Controller of Budget first, set up under Article 228. Think of them as the ultimate bouncer at the club. Their whole job is to oversee how budgets are implemented for both national and county governments. The big rule here is that not a single shilling is allowed to leave the consolidated fund, or any public fund really, with their prior legal approval. They have to verify that the law explicitly authorizes the withdrawal before a single cent moves.
Then on the flip side, under Article 229, you've got the Auditor-General. They come onto the scene after the money has already left the building. Within 6 months after the financial year wraps up, the Auditor-General has to audit the accounts of the national and county governments, the courts, commissions, and the public debt. Their specific mandate from the Constitution? To confirm whether or not public money was actually applied lawfully and, crucially, effectively. They are the ultimate fact-checkers of government spending.
And here is where the Constitution gets actual teeth when it comes to personal accountability. Article 226, Clause 5, makes it crystal clear. If a public officer directs or approves the use of public funds contrary to the law, they are personally liable for any loss that happens because of it. Actually, scratch that, they don't just get a slap on the wrist, they have to make good on that loss out of their own pocket whether they are still sitting in that office or not. You misuse the public's money, you are personally on the hook to pay it back.
Ultimately, Chapter 12 is absolute proof that public finance isn't just boring spreadsheet stuff locked away in government offices. It affects literally everything in your life. It dictates your cost of living, it influences your job opportunities, and it decides whether small businesses can actually grow or if they're just going to be crushed under the economic weight. When public finance is handled transparently and prudently, exactly like the Constitution demands, the whole economy gets a boost. But when waste and mismanagement pile up, you and I are the ones carrying the entire burden.
So, wrapping up this explainer on Chapter 12, I've got to leave you with this final, really important question to chew on, especially when you compare what the law promises with what you actually experience day to day. Do you think taxpayers are truly getting value for their money in Kenya? I really want to know what you think, so drop your thoughts, your experiences, and your take on the situation down in the comments. And be sure to join us next time as we keep unpacking the foundational documents that shape the world around us.